Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the multi-billion-dollar world of public job training. You know, the programs funded by your tax dollars to help people get into new careers. But here's the real question. Are they actually working? Well, a new wave of AI-driven analysis is finally giving us some answers. And trust me, what it's revealing is a total game changer.
So let's kick things off with a promise I'm sure you've seen. You see these ads everywhere for free coding bootcamps, right? They promise this fast track to a high-paying tech job. It really sounds like a golden ticket, especially when the government is footing the bill. But is the reality living up to all that hype?
All right, so first, let's just break down the promise itself. We're going to take a look at how these publicly funded tech bootcamps actually sell themselves to all of us. And for our case study, we're going to zero in on a program out of Louisville, Kentucky, called Code U.
And you know, on the surface, the pitch is amazing. The program is 100% free for students. It's backed by both the city and the state. Their website is boasting over 1,000 graduates placed into actual tech jobs, and it's all supported by this massive volunteer effort from local tech pros. Looking at it on paper, you'd think, wow, this is a clear win for everybody.
Okay, so that's the shiny brochure version. But what happens when we look past that pitch and actually follow the money? Let's dig into the hard data to see the real, measurable outcomes. And this is where the story gets really interesting.
First off, let's be super clear about the scale we're talking about here. This isn't some tiny little experiment. The program, which was originally called Code Louisville, got its start with a nearly $3 million federal grant. So yeah, these things are powered by some serious taxpayer investment.
Luckily for us, we've actually got a rigorous study that gives us some real numbers. Economists found some positive results, but they were pretty modest. So 3 years after the program, graduates were earning about 13% more than their peers. But check out the gender breakdown. Women saw a 20% bump in their earnings, which is way more than the average. The study's conclusion? It was a positive return, but, and this is important, these gains were smaller than what we see in other types of job training.
But here is the massive catch. A study this detailed is the exception, not the rule. A lot of private boot camps will actually pay for third-party audits of their job placement rates. These publicly funded programs, they almost never publish that kind of detailed data. And that creates this huge blind spot, making it nearly impossible for policymakers and for us, the taxpayers, to know what's really working.
So if the public model has all these data gaps, what's the alternative? Well, let's take a look at what are called market-driven models. This is where the training isn't funded by government grants, but by the market itself. And the difference in accountability is just stark.
This slide right here illustrates the fundamental difference perfectly. On the left, you've got the public bootcamp. It's funded by us, the taxpayers, so its main responsibility is to the government agencies handing out the grant money. On the right, you have a private vocational school. It's funded by its students. Its success depends entirely on getting those students licensed and hired. The incentives are just completely different.
And the numbers for that licensed school really tell the story. Because they're regulated, they have to report their state license exam pass rates. The Louisville Beauty Academy reports a nearly 100% pass rate. That is dramatically higher than the state average, which is only 62%. That's a hard, verifiable data point that proves their program works.
Now let's look at another market-driven model, apprenticeships that are funded by employers. And here, the difference in outcomes is even more dramatic. An early report showed Code Louisville alumni started at an average of $48,000. For someone who finishes a registered apprenticeship, that number jumps to around $80,000. That's a huge difference.
So why the massive salary gap? Well, the apprenticeship model is just fundamentally different. It's an earn-as-you-learn system where employers invest directly in training the exact talent they need. And the results are incredible. High starting wages, 90% employment rates, and a career earnings boost of over $300,000. And get this, it's all done without a single dollar of taxpayer-funded tuition.
For years, trying to make these kinds of direct comparisons was basically impossible. The data was just too messy and incomplete. But that is changing, and it's changing fast. The new transparency engine that's forcing this whole reckoning is artificial intelligence.
Just think of AI-driven analytics as a powerful new magnifying glass. It uses machine learning to automatically connect all these scattered dots of public data. It can link government budgets to program enrollments, and then cross-reference all of that with real-time job postings and salary data, all to create one clear, unified picture of what's actually working out there.
So here's how it works in practice.
These AI tools gather all the public data they can find, they analyze which skills the job market is actually looking for, and then they connect the training programs to real employment outcomes. But the real power move comes in that last step. It can flag massive inefficiencies. Like, for example, when multiple government agencies are funding nearly identical boot camps to compete for the same tiny pool of jobs.
And policymakers are screaming for this kind of change. At a recent congressional hearing, the actual workforce leaders, the local boards that handle these public funds, they put it really bluntly. They said the data they have to work with is often very incomplete. They know they can't make smart decisions without better information.
So, what does this all mean for the future of job training? Well, this new era of AI-powered transparency is kicking off a whole new era of accountability, and it's got major consequences for how our public money gets spent.
Honestly, this changes everything. Public officials no longer have to rely on good stories and slick marketing. Armed with clear, AI-driven evidence, they can finally direct our workforce dollars exclusively to programs that have a proven, measurable return on investment. And that means we're heading for a major shakeup. Funding is probably going to shift away from programs with poor placement rates and move toward high-demand fields like the skilled trades. Every single training provider, whether it's a coding boot camp or a welding school, is going to have to justify its existence with hard numbers. The core idea is simple. Taxpayers should be able to demand accountability, just like a customer buying any other service.
And all of this leaves us with one final, really critical question. As AI makes the whole system more transparent, it forces a new debate. When every single dollar and every single outcome is tracked, who decides what skills get funded? Is it going to be pure market demand? Will it be policymakers with a specific vision for the future? Or maybe something else entirely? That is the big conversation this new era of data is forcing all of us to have.